Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Extra Hours. Particularly excited tonight. We've got a great panel, and so I will spare you all the normal introductions. If you want to find out more, officehours.global/join. That'll get you into what we're all about. We meet every day. We're doing Extra Hours tonight, which is a little bit different. We dive into some questions a little bit longer. We've got a great panel. Starting off with Alex Lindsay. Hello, sir.
Hello. Good to be back.
It's good to be back, as in you were here this morning. Were you here?
Well, the funny thing is that this one seems so far apart because the other ones I see people every day, and this one's every week. It's like
Right.
there were
It's
6
been a
or
week.
7 other ones in between this one and the last one.
It's not been 11 hours. It's been a week.
Yeah,
Fair
exactly.
All right. And then we also have Muddy in North Carolina there. Hello, Muddy.
Hello, good to be here. And after a little bit of a snow and cold patch, it's back up to 50, 60 and sunny. So glad to be here.
Nice. I'm in the Adelaide Hills in Mount Barker. And just down the hill in Adelaide is Carl Asmussen. Hello, Carl.
Hello, welcome to Tuesday lunchtime. So welcome to the future.
Very good. Yes, half the panel are in the future this time. And then a new, one of my longest, oldest, closest friends of mine is Stephen Routley, who lives also in the Adelaide Hills. And we work together and play together and somehow still talk to each other.
Thanks for having me, Grant, and team. Long time listener, first time caller, so it's good to be here and work with many of the Office Hours team in the back end, but it's good to be on the front end for once. So there you go.
Nice. Now, Steve, you've worked in AV for like all of us have kind of grew up in it. Now you grew up in doing AV in church and then in the corporate world, right? And lots of camera work and stuff too.
Yeah. Yep. That's how I got dragged into it. Not kicking and screaming, but through a church facility, and then from there, went into the corporate space and ebbed and flowed a bit in and out of corporate world and in other areas of business and jobs, but always have delved back into AV and love that space. So.
Yeah, so you worked for an AV company as well, and so you're on site in a venue for many years. So you've kind of been on that side of it as well as all around the place. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly did my time in some venues, it's a good grounding for just understanding, the showcraft and business and how it all works from a business point of view as well, not just as a tech. So it is a handy space to be in. It can be monotonous, obviously, sometimes, but it has its certainly has its pros and to understand the bigger picture of business and how AV fits into that.
And so then just fill in the rest of the picture as well, because you're not just AV, but just outside the door of your studio there, you've got a bunch of woodworking material and kitchen making tools, right?
Yep, you're right. Yeah, it's I have 3 boys, and as part of that, they when they were the first eldest one was able to talk, he said, "Thanks for visiting, Dad," not really meaning it as such, but I was away a lot with audiovisual, as we all can experience, testify to, that sometimes the long hours. And as such, I decided to swap career paths for a little while and went into cabinet making, which is what my father-in-law did. And that was only 8 minutes from home and no traffic lights. So that was a definite game changer to a venue that was an hour and a quarter away. So from that, I always found I was still wishing I was back in the AV game. I was still doing things on the weekends. Every cabinet making job that I was doing was somehow getting audio visual included in it, motorized appliance cupboards and LED lighting and
got some lighting. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. Animated, and I think one of my projects ended up with 36 channels of Bluetooth controlled sort of whatever I could find as equivalent of DMX, basically in the cabinet making space. So to make a very high end bar. So so I kind of was putting my AV touch on everything that was cabinet making related. So yeah.
So good. Well, and as you can imagine, everyone, having Steve on the team, building out sets and things just ends up being epic because it's, cabinetry, cabinet making, and then AV means like projection mapping and, screen TVs, built into things and whatever. So there you go. There's an introduction to Steve. So if you have some questions for him, and he's in this comfortable time zone for this extra hours, and so you'll see him pop up from time to time. The last person on the panel is someone that I met and actually is in this. Hang on, there we go. There we go. Look down the bottom there. This is on the end. It was the end of March 2020. It's the most disinterested person right down the bottom is Mr. Blue Melnick. Look, you're like, what is this thing? I'm basically the same. Alex at least had a good setup there. You can see he was ready to go. Most of us were just sort of, this is only a few days in, and we're like, what is going on here? But Blue, that's you there, and this is how we met.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah. I was actually thinking to myself that that Chris Fenwick hadn't quite developed his framer just yet in that particular shot.
That's right.
So
That's true.
maybe I'm not the least interested person on that particular call. I was also trying to figure out where I am in that call, but anyway, good to be here. Kind of like Steve,
right.
I've not actually ever been on
Not on extra.
this particular call. Yeah. What do we
No,
call it?
welcome,
After
welcome.
hours, extra hours. What is this one?
Extra hours.
Extra hours. Yeah. No, I've not been on this.
Yeah.
But
Now-
I do appreciate how those of you who are in Australia aren't saying that Alex, Muddy, and I are living in the past, but rather that you're living in the future. So
Weird.
I appreciate the understanding that really time revolves around the North American time zones. So thank you for that.
Well, as Steve just mentioned earlier, he said he has no traffic lights between work. Now, I just want to be equipped. We do have traffic lights in Australia in general, not that far.
That's right. But kangaroos always have right of way, so they go whenever.
As long as they're on your left. Yes.
Well, you just don't want to get punched. That's why, right? Is that what's going on?
That's right. Now, if we fast forwarded 2 weeks from that screenshot, we would get to this recording that I have here. Oh, do you know what happens in QuickTime? If you have a magic mouse and you swipe...
How are you the host of this? I'm just wondering.
In QuickTime. Thank you. Thanks. When you swipe in QuickTime, it goes into like a shuttle mode, but then you can't get it out of shuttle mode.
You have to just hit play.
So, in general, my wife always gives me a hard time about being in a cave, but I tend to want to block all the windows out and then add the light back that I want. Obviously, sometimes there's reasons to have that, but on a day-to-day basis of it.
I just close my.
Hang on. Let's just fast forward a bit
and managing those things. And so when I started getting reports during the week and weekend that how it was going, I was like, I have to bring him in and have him talk about how this all works. And so, Blue, can you tell us how we got there? How did we get to doing this giant Zoom?
Yeah, sure. So we're just a little bit of back history.
gosh,
We're
okay,
an event management company.
So I ask a question as well, and then that was kind of the beginning. Oh, here it is, I think, somewhere. Yeah. There's something I asked, and anyway,
Had them unmuted for that first 30 minutes and let them control it.
The point is,
Did not leave it unmuted.
we this is now 5 years ago, and Blue and I connected after this call. I think it was that I was showing that I was doing like what is internet clicker, like as in before internet clicker. I think maybe if internet clicker was around then, I'd be really frustrated because they just do it so well and easy. but I was trying to do it with Companion and things, and so I got Companion working, and then Blue and I connected, and we were trying to, make that work, and I got that working, and then I said to Blue, hey, how about do you ever do like tech check for all the people in your Zoom? Do you do that overnight? And if so, why don't I do that during my day? You can go to bed and I can do it for you. And so I did that for a couple of nights and came up with a whole bunch of ideas and said, hey, Blue, what if we did this and that? And the rest is history, right?
Yeah, it's hard to believe that's 5 years ago, to be honest. There are days that it feels like 20, and there are days that it feels like it was yesterday. But I was actually just sitting talking with somebody that I do a little bit of work with. We were talking about the fact that April 3rd through the 5th is coming up. And those are the dates that were the first virtual event that we did. And we're trying to think of something to do around that 5-year anniversary of that event. But that event wouldn't have happened without Alex hopping on a call for a group of entrepreneurs that one of them knew him. Guy by the name of Carl. I never get his last name right, but it's like Krumenecker or something like that. And Alex popped on that call and was just answering some questions about technology to a bunch of, what we would affectionately call Luddites. And he, on that call, gave his email address out. Now, you have to understand, I've been listening to Alex since I was, a wee lad, like the original Mac Break Weekly, which were a video series. Like, that's my first introduction to Alex. And now this guy on a call that has 20 other people is giving out his email address. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying to figure something out. I'm emailing Alex. Alex is nice enough to hop on a call with me. Now, again, I think this is just because it's COVID and we're all not doing anything at this point because events are shut down. So he's like, yeah, sure, I'll talk to this crazy guy named Blue. And I actually think at the end of the call, he thought I was crazier than at the beginning of the call, because I started telling him what we were thinking about doing. And he was like, oh man,
I was excited.
I don't know.
I was excited. I was like, oh my gosh, look at what he's doing. Like, he's turning the dials all the way to 11. So
this could either go really well or really horribly. Like, there's no middle ground with this.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, it was like things that we had done, but much bigger. Like, it was just like, I was just like, oh, like I could see the line talking to you that it could work. Like I can, sometimes you look at things and people show you, they're like, we want to do this thing. And you're like, oh, I can't even see the other side of that string, like it's off there. And I don't know, this one, I can see the end of the string, like, oh, this could work, but I was like, it's gonna be hard. Like, it's gonna be, there's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Yeah, it was awesome. And he was like, you have, before you do this, you have got to talk to Brian Maddox. He is fortunately right down the street from you, because I was in Merle's Inlet at the time. He's in Savannah. And Brian also, like all good AV guys at the time, was out of work. And he also hopped on a call with me. And we kind of figured out, well, he basically taught me what a mix minus was, and then how to do 8 of them on a single board. So that's really what it all boiled down to in the end. Yeah. So yeah, wouldn't be here without those calls. So always.
Blue is downplaying his knowledge there a little bit. You were very much aware of what a mix minus was, but the scale of which you're doing, and I think the genius of that first event that you did, I think, and I've heard it a few times now, but I really think that it was your focus on what the hosts would see that was the difference. And I think that because you were planning out being able to see lots of screens, putting lots of screens up, that was kind of the thing on the napkin, right? You're drawing out lots of screens and thinking, what if a host could see that? That I think was a key difference to what most people were thinking about. Do you see that as well?
Yeah,
that was the success of that.
I think so, because what was different about that experience for people watching at home, right? I mean, soon after, I don't know, whatever, 8 months after, I feel like it was January of 21. Was it Stanford that came out and kind of coined the phrase Zoom fatigue? which drove
Right.
those of us who were in the virtual space absolutely batty.
We were just like, oh my gosh, you guys.
Yeah, like this is not real. Like nobody is claiming a Netflix fatigue, right? This is just bad video. You just don't know how to present on video. That's what Zoom fatigue is. So yeah, I think my focus outside of trying to figure out how to set up, 8 Zoom machines so that they could all talk to each other without hearing massive echoes, was how do we give our presenters a really great experience so that they show up the way speakers show up, right? Because when a speaker hops on a stage in front of a live audience, they're constantly feeding off of the energy of the audience. You don't just stand on stage and present or sit at your desk like we do most of the time on Zoom. When you're on a stage and you're presenting, you're moving back and forth, you're interacting, you're engaging, you're making eye contact. And I think that was really the key to the first presenter, and then of course all the rest of them since then, really showing up amazingly well for virtual audiences and feeling connected. It's not just like I can see people at home when I'm on a virtual stage, and like I'm being sucked into their home and in their life, and it's really cool. And in many ways, I still think superior to the in-person experience. And anyway, yeah, that was a huge focus for us.
Yeah, it was a big change too. That first event was something like 300 people in person, and then converted to like 1,200, 1,400, something like that online, right? So
yeah, we had a captive audience. Let's face it. But yes, yeah,
it was a good time, for
Yeah.
online events. Yeah, I
for
get
sure.
that.
They had nothing else to do, or nothing else
Yeah,
they could
fair.
even do, right? So
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've got a Zoom question there. Carl, are you able to read those questions there? Just put him on the
Sure, I
spot.
can do that.
Thank you.
Let's see. So this is from John Nicholas in Concord, California.
Like
I've been
Nichols.
using Zoom
John
meetings
Nichols.
plus.
Nichols.
Sorry, John Nicholas. I've
Nichols.
been using Zoom meetings plus Zoom ISO OSC to run events with 150 attendees at my company, mostly managing spotlights. I'm about to jump to 500 plus attendees. Any considerations, tips for using Zoom ISO OSC at that scale?
Blue.
So my initial thought is it really depends on what you're using the spotlighting for. I will tell you, generally speaking, I avoid spotlight inside of live events. I think it is a horrible experience, and we as humans are not as fast as Zoom is at capturing the active speaker. So rather than trying to force the spotlight of who is speaking and at what time and forcing the audience to have the experience you want them to have, I personally prefer to allow the audience to have the experience they want to have. If they want to watch in gallery view, let them watch in gallery view. If they want to watch in speaker view, let them watch in speaker view. And then allow Zoom's active speaker to take over who is actually talking and what video is being sent. So that is even more true with larger events, right? So when you go from 50 people to 150 people, it gets not 3 times more complicated. It's exponentially more complicated to try and manage spotlights. And when you go from 150 to 500, it's going to be an even different experience. So that's my personal thought on that. And yeah, now if you're using Zoom OSC and ISO in a different fashion, for a different reason to get spotlights into your video feed in a different way, then the answer may be different. But if you're talking about the attendee experience, I just avoid it.
In fairness, Blue, it's been a while since you've done an event in one Zoom meeting though, right? And that does make a difference.
I mean, we're running one right now that has 360 people in it.
In one
thing
Zoom meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it has been a while. This weekend we had like 4,500 people in Zoom. So yeah, but even still, even when we're just running a single meeting, like we did for our own event that we did a couple of weeks ago, we only ran a single meeting because I try to avoid multiple Zoom meetings if I can, right? Because it's just you're adding complexity where you just don't need it. So if you don't need extra Zoom meetings, don't do it. And for us, anything under 600 people, we can do in a single Zoom meeting very easily. And so a couple of weeks ago, we ran our own event. We had around 600 people active. And we just did it in a single Zoom meeting. And same thing, we just avoid Spotlight in general.
So when someone asked a question, for example, were you then pulling that out and sending it back in through the production switcher and sending, right?
Yeah,
Well.
so we are doing that, but what winds up happening in that case, like especially if you Spotlight, the audio is going to be off, generally speaking, right? Because the video that I'm sending back into the Zoom meeting is from our production switcher, and yes, we are cutting to the pin view or perhaps a picture-in-picture pin view, like we do on this call, and the production feed is half a second or so behind. So, but the audio for that one room is coming from the primary speaker. It's coming from the person in the room. So it's always going to be off from a sync perspective, unless you're really constantly dialing your sync settings, which that sounds like a headache to me. So yeah, for me, I would, we do send that video back, but primarily because we're recording that feed. It's really not about hoping the attendee is looking at that feed. We let the attendee see the full screen view of the person asking the question.
Muddy's desperate to jump the queue. Muddy?
Well, I want to comment. In fact, over your shoulder, Blue, you were showing a side-by-side pin view, or at least one of the quadrants in that. You were showing a side-by-side pin view. And one of the things that Sage does at their studios that's really, and it speaks to this point of being able to pin the speaker or the guest when they're asking a question, but still allowing active speaker to capture and assign kind of who's in that spotlight or who's in focus. And what happens is when the attendee is asking the question, their audio comes through, and so we see them full screen. Right? Like just like you're seeing me full screen right now, you're seeing the active speaker audience member asking the question. But then when Blue or Barry speak, or the presenter in their studio, it switches to that side-by-side view. We hear Blue in real time or Barry in real time. So they're in perfect sync, but we see the person pinned to them who is quiet receiving the answer. So you actually kind of see them nod and you can see the reaction, and it feels like a two-way conversation. But then when the guest speaks again, active speaker cuts to them. And so you have this neat dynamic where you have this visual of the side-by-side, but by allowing active speaker, it actually cuts to each view and the lip sync stays in sync. So that's what I wanted to share as Blue was sharing, which is a great execution of kind of letting Zoom do what it does best.
Yeah, dare I say that that's a hybrid of having a production switched, show which records really well as people having that native Zoom experience of active speaker. It actually does work really well. Ron in the chat just said, I love the new multi-speaker view. And except for the fact that the speakers lingers on the screen long after they're done, which I agree. Be great if Zoom had a remove person from that multi-speaker view. I use that all the time now, and actually a good little insight too is that is what is live streamed. It basically live streams active speaker out of Zoom when you're in that multi-view mode, whereas when you're in gallery view, it streams gallery view. When you're in multi-speaker mode, it streams active speaker. So that's quite handy. Alex, what have you got on this?
Yeah, one of the things that we did with Hangouts, which we haven't done with Zoom, but I've talked about it a little bit before, is this hybrid between what we found is it's a little bit of what Blue was talking to. We found the computer was able to cut faster than we were, but we also found that it got distracted. Someone make a noise, someone would do something else, and it would go wandering off. And so we had this thing called soft clicking that we programmed into Hangouts using their API that would allow us to just select, these are the only 4 people that you're paying attention to. And it would literally, just turn everybody else down and it would allow itself to bounce back and forth between them, but only those four, and no one else could interrupt it. No one else could do anything else until we let those go. And then we'd let it go, and then other people could talk, or we'd unselect people and they would just disappear, because it would be, but instead of, it was a hybrid of not quite active speaker, but also not, we weren't editing, because we did find that we lost energy when we tried to cut it explicitly. There was something about, especially when people laugh and they talk back and forth, there's this shuddering experience that you get oftentimes that we really liked, and so I think that's kind of interesting. It is really one of those things that trying to figure out how to deal with so many people is really the thing. Now, Blue, for everyone listening, when you go over 600, Zoom supports more than 600. What has you switch to multiple meetings when you hit that number?
Yeah, for us, it's related to breakouts.
Yep.
So for us, we prefer to, when we do breakouts, which is just taking everybody in a meeting and putting them into small groups to interact with each other, we prefer those breakouts to be 5 to 6 people, because much more than that, it's too many people and they take too long and it takes away from the energy of the event. So for me, that, especially for events where the host is going to be using the breakout functionality, 5 to 600 is kind of that magic number where we start going to 2, 3, 4, whatever events or meetings. If the host isn't going to go into breakouts and they're positive of it, right? Like, cause it's like, this is one of those things. Once you change your mind, like once you say, no, I'm not using breakouts, halfway through the event, you can't change your mind. So as long as we're sure that the host is absolutely not going to go to breakouts, then we'll use max capacity, go up to, I'd say we don't go up to 1,000. We actually go more, usually we peak at about 920, something like that. Because I never want to have attendees have an experience, which is that Zoom message that says, I'm sorry, this meeting has reached capacity, especially for a paid event, right? If you have 1,001 people try to get into the meeting, now you have problems.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Other things to look at, by the way, when people are, for those watching, once you get to a high number, is notifications. So telling, Zoom OSC now, when you start getting these high numbers, you can limit it to certain groups, so you can say, well, OSC or panelists or whatever, you can limit the panelist notifications, limit the Zoom OSC notifications to certain groups. That's one way to kind of streamline, some of those things as you start to get to that larger area. I have to admit that I'm always impressed. I always watch Blue's approach and I always go, oh, it's too scary for me. Like I'm not a, like, Mukana, which is what we're using to manage these questions, was literally created so that I could get rid of mics in the room. It wasn't an online tool. It was literally just, I don't want to, because I sat through years and years and years of people asking really long questions about things no one cared about. And so like in a weekend course talking about your life, you want people to get up and, like a Tony Robbins style thing or whatever. That's what it is. Like, those long answers are that's the course, right? And so, but when you're talking about, like, when we're having a conversation about computer graphics, or we're having a conversation about almost everything else, I don't want to listen to somebody talk about it for a long time. And I found that the pace, and I think that, there's a bunch of data that we had about, watching people interact. And we found that it wasn't that much different in person and online, which is that if you talk for more than about 6 minutes, people stop listening. Like, they just stop, they put you in passive mode. And at first we thought that was only online, because that's what we were testing. We were testing eye tracking. And then we found that if you put a slide up, by the way, it's about 90 seconds. So if you put a slide up and it didn't matter whether you had a picture in picture, it was, your audience is going to, go into the tank, and one of the things that we noticed, though, is once we did the research, we're still shooting all these keynotes, all our return cameras, if you really pay attention to them, how do you find 10 people that are actually paying attention? It's almost impossible. 15,000 people in the room, you can't find 10 that are all looking at the stage, because they're all looking at their phones, their laptops, they're checking email. They're not paying attention, because that format doesn't really work anymore. I'm not sure if it ever worked, but it definitely worked better when we didn't have any other option. When there wasn't HD video, like when it was when it was little 320 by 240 screens, then being there to get the information made sense. But I don't know if it does now.
Yeah. Yeah. John, as you think about the scaling to that sort of number, one of the things that shifts it for the team, I think, is when you start moving to multiple Zoom meetings, like we're talking about, but not even just for the attendees, but moving all of your panel or all of your speakers into a separate Zoom meeting. We really like that process for a single attendee Zoom meeting. I still like the process of having a green room. So we call it a green room, which is the Zoom meeting is a green room, and the stage is a breakout off of the green room or the main meeting. And so then we have all our stakeholders, the team members, the speakers or whatever, all just drop into the green room. And then, we're talking about everything. And then once they're ready to go on the stage, we can push them into that breakout room, and now they're able to, do the show. And from there, we take it and broadcast it into that Zoom meeting. Now there is there's a lot of extra complications with that, but it does make for a better experience, I think, for looking after all the team and those speakers, because you can easily talk with them, you can pull them in and out of breakout rooms, and you can chat with them and things like that. So,
and when Grant told me about this was like we were talking at some point, and it was just like my brain just opened up. Like I was like, oh, I never thought of using breakout rooms for that, and now we use them for everything that way. We don't necessarily do a lot of meetings, but we do ones that are and we take them, get them out of that main room immediately. And we do these things where we've done these things in the past where they're like junkets for band, like an artist. And, so they're going to play, out of Nashville or whatever and answer questions. And there's all these music industry folks or whatever that are all coming in different rooms. But you bring them in and you just move them around on the room, or you bring them into a green room. And then there's the reception room. Then there's hair and makeup where we check their connections. Then there's the green room. And it was funny when we first did it for our first client, we were like, it's like the Emerald City, like the, so then we called it the Emerald Protocol, and that's what it's called, is the Emerald. And they were like, are we going to do the Emerald thing? Like, are we, every time we come back, when you give it things names that are fun, they're like, are we going to do the Emerald thing? I was like, yeah, we're going to do the Emerald Protocol.
Well, likewise, your mind was blown with that. That's how I felt when Blue was talking about this meeting, because there's 1,200 people, because it really wasn't much earlier than that if someone came to me and said, hey, I want to do a meeting with 50 people with their cameras on, I would have been like, you're crazy. Like, you can do Skype with maybe 6, but you're not going to bet it. Now, that was partly, in big part, my ignorance to what Zoom was already doing at the time. But it just wasn't, we weren't really thinking like that. We weren't thinking, how would you have 50 people all with their cameras on and you can see them all? And so the idea of 1,200 in one place or, one environment was just, it was mind blowing. And the setup that you had there, Blue, too, because no one had that type of setup where it was just that wider shot of you, of you just kind of casually sitting at a table. Because we do all these headshots, we weren't doing table shots like that. And I was like, that is so cool. And so the whole thing was...
that is more just that I didn't know how to properly frame a shot than anything else. But just a little too much of so much other than the person talking in that shot, but whatever.
And I think that one of the things that's really powerful, though, is that we're all trading notes all the time. Like that it is... and it was constant back then, but it's still happening where we keep learning what the other people are doing, because a lot of times it's just knowing it's possible, like knowing that you can get there is and I never thought of that, and I think that was one of the intentions of office hours when we started, was like, let's all trade notes and make sure that we keep moving this down the path, rather than, otherwise not any one of us individually would have created the kind of events we ended up creating, in that or what we have created, I think, without trading notes.
Well, and building confidence too, right? Like, I've come up with an idea, and then 5 other people are also came to that same conclusion and are doing it too. I feel really confident now that this is a good way of doing it, like because they're all doing it too. So yeah, the speed at which we were able to do all of that just scaled so quickly. So it was very exciting. I did see Tamara
And
was
office
saying
hours
that,
really was. I mean, Alex should really be given a lot of credit for the environment that he created that allowed us all to share together. Because, without that, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of people that I've been able to connect with as a result of office hours that I just never would have spoken to otherwise. And and very much a collaborative environment. And I think it's in part because I'm not going to talk to 20 AV companies who are all in my current market. First off, 75% of them don't know what they're talking about. But beyond that, now it's competition. But when all of a sudden you open it up to the world, and I'm talking with people who are working in Seattle or California or Adelaide, right? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the more of us, I'm not sure that's the right way to say it, but more of us who are doing this right, the easier it is going to be for us to continue to get clients to continue to do this. So
Right.
you created this environment where we just got to collaborate and share and continue to rise each other up. It's pretty awesome.
Well, and again, I've talked about them in the past, is that I didn't do that when Hangouts came out. We knew how to do it better than anyone else in the world, and I wouldn't show anybody anything. Like we would, unless I was paid to train someone, we wouldn't post anything. I mean, B&H wanted me to build like design kits and give me a web page on the B&H site of like online web, and I wouldn't do it because I was like, that's the secret sauce, and whatever per 4% that I'm going to get, or whatever the number was, I don't know what the number was, but whatever that number is, it's not going to add up to the $30,000 an event or $100,000 an event that I'm making. And and so I had no interest, but the industry died because people were just rolling 737s down the runway. I would go in and do one, and it would work really well, and they'd promote the heck out of the next one that they were going to take over and do themselves, and then they'd fail, and then they never know. And anybody knows, you do a bad live event, you never want to do another one. Like, we have to get over it because we had enough success that we know that that's an anomaly. But if it's your second event, it's your last event. Like that, if you do a live event and it fails, you're like, it's a horrible feeling.
I mean, listen, for a lot of people, if you do a live event that succeeds, it's a horrible feeling. So yeah,
Exactly.
it's even worse for those that fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Steve, you got a comment on this?
Yeah, I agree with Blue, how he's saying about not to over spotlight too much. But we have had some events where we've had some elderly people, or people that are maybe not quite on a lot of mobile devices and don't really know how to navigate, active speakers to, a gallery view back to a whatever. And so I guess knowing who your target audience is might be something to consider, knowing that, you might need to be able to crash what they actually see, to make sure that they see it when you want them to see it and not miss it. We've had a lot of help tickets and a lot of support tickets going, I can't see this or I can't see that.
It's too small.
So yeah, too small. And so if you can have that sort of push to that audience who aren't savvy or more on mobile devices, might be a thing to consider.
Muddy, back that up.
Yeah, I was looking at this question. There's two things that occur to me. One, kind of along the philosophical conversation we're having, or at least kind of the spotlight conversation. But the other, just a kind of practical consideration in Zoom ISO and Zoom OSC when you're getting to the point of 500 plus people. And Alex actually mentioned this word earlier, but it has to do with groups. And one of the really useful things around, and he was mentioning it in the context of notifications and kind of turning off, limiting some of that chatter that can happen, because once you get that many connections, there's a lot of messaging that Zoom OSC is sending back and forth, and you think it's hard to find a person among pages and pages and pages if you're using a Stream Deck with Companion along with these tools, which you very well may be trying to find specific people. And so one of the things that I have done, and I've learned that can really help in that situation, is using groups. And in larger events where we may have 15 people who are going to speak through the course of the day, but then an audience of 400 or 500 people who aren't going to be speakers is limiting the speakers. I don't want them all to be co-hosts because I don't want them screwing up breakout rooms, but I do want to be able to kind of, when it's their turn, be able to unmute them and manage this subset of people in a more efficient way and in a way that keeps the show smooth, and you're not fumbling around looking for people and searching for people and have that dead air, which can really kind of kill the energy. And so using some select groups within Zoom OSC has allowed me to kind of more efficiently manage them, muting and unmuting, things like that. So the second factor has to do with the spotlighting. And the other case where I have found this to be useful. Now, I love a fully produced show where the presenter is in a separate stage and you can bring that feed into the production switcher and send that program feed to the audience. And whether it comes up tonight or another time, it'd be nice to talk about what the experience is like for that presenter in their own room, because that's one of the harder things, is to make sure that the speaker or host still feels connected to the event and connected to the audience and be able to see the gallery if they're in their own, stage, if they're in their own breakout room or own Zoom room. So one of the ways we've gotten around that, when I guess it's not a fully produced show, but a semi-produced show, we're running content from this end, from a remote speaker. So we've got slides or videos that we're pushing into the meeting, and the presenter is in the meeting, in the same meeting as the audience, is we can use multi-spotlight to be able to show a side-by-side view to the audience. Now, when you do that, it kind of brings the whole audience focus to that side-by-side view, but then they can hit gallery and go back to gallery. But, I agree with all the things that have been said, but I've also found another potentially useful use cases when you're showing content as a video feed, right? So we don't use share screen, but we're pushing that in as a video feed along with the speaker. That content would never become the active speaker because it's a slide with no audio, right? So Zoom isn't going to know, oh, that slide should be spotlit right now because it's, so in any case, that's another use case where we found that to be useful when the speaker is in the same meeting with everyone and we've got remote content.
Very good. This show is dedicated to John, as we've spent most of the time talking about his question.
Good job,
well
John.
Done, John. Yeah, well done. What is the next question, Carl?
So the next question is from Muddy Schlegel, who's here on the panel, also from the Research Triangle in North Carolina. If you are running slides remotely, what is your preferred way to show the speaker their presenter view and/or speaker notes?
Carl?
So both Keynote and PowerPoint have collaboration mode, which means they can be logged in on their machine into that file, and then the person who's technically running it, so they don't have to worry about clicking anything, they can be logged into the same collaboration. This can be done in the desktop version of the app, a mobile version of the app for the person running it, or a web version of the app. Doesn't matter. It can be any of them for each person. And then one can control, one can just view. And the person who is giving the presentation can arrange their screens, can arrange their windows the way that's best suited to them. And the person who's running the screen can do it on there. So if this can be done in the room, so someone can just be at the back of the room running this and you're logged into another machine at the front of the room, or you can be on the other side of the planet. So this will work either. It doesn't matter if you're on the side of the planet or just on the other side of the room. Having two separate machines, one for each person, one running it, one presenting, logged in collaboration mode into that same file. And then each person can set up their screen however they want, in whichever portal they want. It could be the web portal on a large display on a tablet. It can be the, an iPhone version if they want to keep it very minimalist, or it can be the desktop version. And this is true for, this feature's been around for a decade now between both PowerPoint and Keynote. So it's a very mature feature in both products.
Alex?
So I'm going to pop the grenade and throw it in. We recommend that they don't use notes, or that they only use basic notes, and they definitely don't use anything that looks like a teleprompter or anything that else that because no one's listening. Like, and so we tell them, really think about whether, again, when there's many companies that will do it, like that they feel like they need to do it. This is the model, but we try to gently, and what I find is it's like kind of like dripping against something where over many, many shows, if you point out little things to your client, it slowly wears them down. And that is, hey, just look at how people are. Like, what happens is that it's kind of what we tend to call red pill conversations, but instead of red pill, it's like red drops. And you just keep putting things in so they notice them, and it poisons their mind looking at what they're doing. And it's kind of like, it's that whole, if I had a friend who got a new monitor, or got a new TV. It was, at the time, it was 80-inch, and he was very proud of it. And I said, does the macro blocking bother you at all? And I said that, and I didn't mean to ruin the experience that he spent $6,000 on a thing, and Comcast is still going to send you a bad image. Didn't matter, like what it was 80 inches, and then he said he had to send it back. Like he's like, I spent too much money, it doesn't work. And so anyway, the point is that what I point out is, like, the problem we have with it is when we're talking, look at how many people, just watch how many people are looking at their phones, and think about how many times you watch your phone, like, and think about whether this is the format that's the most engaging if everyone's looking down. Like, like, if that's the case, then maybe so, but we're all, it's an emperor's new clothes kind of problem, where we all keep doing this format that no one really, really likes to go through, and so, and then people say, well, what are you going to do? What should we do? And then you're like, well, you should make videos and then do Q&A, and let people watch the videos and do Q&A, but don't make them sit through someone talking on stage with less technology than the video would have at 1x. Like, that's a pretty brutal experience, and one that I don't go to anymore. Like, I won't, you can't get me to go to a conference anymore. Like, I'll go to the conference, but I just go to the expo and I meet people and I hang out with them. I don't try to go to any proceedings.
Fair enough. I like the different take on it.
Yeah, it's like like we were looking here, and I just went over here. I just was like, I'm just going to say this other thing, but I'm obsessed with it now. Like, I can't get it out of my head now about this. Like, the entire format of what we've been doing is completely bankrupt. Like, it's just, and we just keep doing it, but at some point we're going to stop. And I think it's important for us as media producers. They'll be looking for the next thing, because the music's going to stop at some point. Like, where people aren't going to keep doing that format.
Steve, have you got a take on this?
Yeah.
Oh, you muted again.
Double tap. There we go. I guess my background on this is that we've done a lot of recordings being recorded in my studio here or at a studio Grant, and then we play them back. And so I guess in that scenario, we're wanting the highest quality version we can get of it, especially if there's video and detailed content. So as such, I normally run a Mac or a PC in the studio here, and they're both logged into Zoom. We then share that screen, or we actually share presenter view with them, and record the actual, obviously the presentation mode. That way we've got the full mouse tracking, and we're sharing that via Zoom usually, as in remote control. And I think now I haven't had to do it too much. We've actually used the clicker, the PowerPoint mode, slide advancement now. Slides advancement that's now built into Zoom. My journal, normally I would do mouse anyway, just to be able to give them the full control and feel of that. And then we find that works quite well, that they get to control the computer. It can be a bit laggy, obviously, but for the most part, they are just clicking advanced. But if I do need to point something out with a laser, we're getting that full high quality version of it that we're recording here locally. And the videos play out really well. So, yeah.
Muddy.
I agree with Alex's sentiment of not having scripted content, and even to the extent of not having a lot of slides. There's some events that are workshop style events where what's really on the screen is exercise for the audience to kind of work through. We found presenter view can be useful in those situations to help the guest or help the host kind of know what's next and kind of how they reveal that exercise. And so it's as much about seeing the current slide and the next slide as it is, maybe a couple of bullet points to keep them on track. But and the other time where we've still seen this is in enrollment events when they have an offer and an invitation, then they want that part of the presentation to go smoothly. Those are some times when we still see this used, even though I agree with your sentiment, as much as we can avoid it. One of the things that I've done to provide that speaker view back is a presenter view. So I've got a presenter view here that I'm then capturing with Video Ninja and putting that into a Dashmaster 2K dashboard along with the run of show and a stage timer. And so the host has a web page that they go to that shows the Dashmaster, and on 80% or 60% of the screen, they can see that presenter view along with a couple of other kind of useful bits. And that has worked, but it also feels like 5 or 6 steps to solve one problem. So in any case, appreciate all the input.
Very good. Next question.
Next question is from Jeff Keithley in the Lone Star State of Texas. So, Blue, do you feel like virtual events are still growing, or have you seen a decline in attendees?
Blue.
Yeah, we haven't really seen a decline in attendees for the most part. What we tend to see is there's a lot more noise in the marketplace, right? So there's more events because they're easier to do than perhaps they used to be. That may be in part our fault. But at the same time, I think that the larger events are still really big. I know we have an event coming up in a couple of weeks for Tony Robbins, and it is, as of the last time I heard, they have more people registered for this particular virtual event than any virtual event they've ever done. So
which
that
is a
to
lot.
me, yeah, it is,
which is a large number.
It is a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's approaching 50,000 people for that event. They just did a free event. And that's a paid event. They did a free event that they have registered like 1.2 million people for, or something like that. Right? It was just an insane number. And I think that's
thankfully they weren't all in Zoom.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I do think that is in part a function of marketing and less about the delivery of virtual events. We still see when people show up for virtual events that are produced well and are, I'll just say, done right, that people stay for them, right? So we're still seeing great stick rates for our events. We're still seeing people stay 6-7 hours in a day. And now they're not locked in their home, so it's a much better gauge as to whether or not it's an engaging experience for them. So yeah, I don't see it going downhill or declining in attendance. The number of events that we are doing here at Sage is probably, I wouldn't say plateaued, but steady the last couple of years. But I don't think that's a function of less demand. I think that's a function of more people doing virtual events well, right? There's more studios around the country that do what we do now than there used to be. So, I think it's just a more crowded marketplace.
Alex, have you got another grenade for us?
No grenade here. I think that one of the things that we're starting to see, because we're talking about stuff in the fall with a couple of clients, is people looking at ways to augment their physical event with more online experiences. So reducing the number of tracks, so the tracks are getting pushed to individual online events that are an hour or two. So instead of having the audio, the smaller tracks, because what people really do want to do is they want to meet with each other. They want to talk. Having a plenary gives everybody a context to talk about the same thing. So having, so what they're doing is the plenary is still physical, still in the room, and you come for that. But it means that when you leave the room, you can go, what do you just think of what Blue said? And so it gives them that space. And it's very much of like, and they're not learning, I think they're learning from some online, but also TED. This is the way TED runs, right? TED is a plenary. It's 20-minute talks. When you walk out, everybody saw the same thing. You have something to talk about, because TED is essentially a networking event that has people talking at it, you know. And so, and it's all, you realize very quickly that's how they built it. And I think that is the thing that we're seeing more people starting to think about, is maybe I don't have 8 tracks, maybe I have 1 track in it, but it's still physical, with still an expo. People are getting together. It's actually a much more relaxed timeline, and they're still doing all the content virtually, because all those little ones are actually easier to do. You have all those speakers, and you know, you get them to come in from their offices. The key is, I know that for me, I get excited. I saw there was something that was recent by some technical group or whatever. I get excited because I see the title, and then I show up and it's just really bad. And then I leave. Like I'm there for like 10 minutes and I'm like, oh, I can't, like, it's bad audio, bad video, a slide that's full screen while they talk under it with tons of text. And I'm like, okay, I gotta go. Like, this isn't what I came for.
Yeah. Blue?
Yeah, I think the other thing that we're seeing in our marketplace anyway, and we tend to live in I call it continuing education for entrepreneur space, but a lot of the larger events that have been around for a long time are going away, the in-person events. So we just were involved in an event that has been 4,000 to 5,000 people for 10 years, and they did their last ever. Another person that we do some virtual work for is a person by the name of Grant Cardone, and he's announced their last. They do an annual big event that has like 10,000, 20,000 people in it. They've announced this is their last one. Another event in the space called Traffic and Conversion, which for the last 10 years has been 5,000 to 6,000 people, actually canceled this year. And that's all happening in large part, I think, because, well, first off, virtual is so much more profitable as an event experience. But second, the marketplace for in-person events and where you do them at is horrible right now. It is a seller's market for sure. Hotels and, in-house AV companies and restrictions are worse than they've ever been. $175 for a gallon of coffee, and we complain about the price of gas. Like, it's just insane what hotels are charging for a completely substandard experience. And as a result, you're seeing, I think you're seeing a lot of these larger events where, they have like $1 million food and beverage minimum, where, 5 years ago, that used to be a couple 100,000, just not able to continue to do them and have an alternative that's actually better in many ways, which is virtual. So, I don't think virtual is going anywhere. I think the genie's been let out of the bottle, and unfortunately, we're all here to stay.
Oh, Muddy, quickly.
Yeah, I actually think there is a call for continued digital first events, where I learned from Alex first this idea of a digital first event, and it's what for Blue's last event I got to experience. I got to go and be part of an in-person watch party. Essentially, all of the presenters were in a studio, and all of us 30, 40 people were gathered together having a community experience, watching on a 100-inch video wall. And so we get all the breaks and breakout times. We are physical and get that kind of person-to-person connection, but yet the content, everybody has a front row seat, because you don't have this. I won't talk about hybrid, but I love this idea of digital first, and there's more. It seems like more call for that experience. Thanks, Blue. 135-inch video wall. Very good.
I wondered if it was only 100. It'd be like, you could have bought a 90. What are they? 95-inch screens or something from Costco now or something. But all right. Last question, Carl.
The next question is from Muddy Slegel of the Tar Heel State, North Carolina, and here on the panel. Does Zoom still require a support team to enable HD video, or can a user simply turn it on via their dashboard?
Alex?
Yes and no. So, so something we got caught with something over the weekend, and it appears that something's rolling out very slowly on Zoom. So, so it has in the past to get 1080p, yeah, you had to have at least 10 business licenses that were there. It appears that it's only being limited soon to one. And so we saw this, it's actually showed up in Canada. So Alex Knight was asking about this over the weekend. And we were like, no, you have to buy 10. Like we were just like, that's the way it is. It's not. So it turns out with some more research, it's slowly rolling out. I think it's going to be 25 in Canada and $18 or whatever in the US and different places. But what you'll need to do to get back to the support ticket is you just have to buy a business license and then file a support ticket for 1080p. The big advantage of going to sessions is you get all the liminal tools. So if you do sessions, you get the same 1080p, but then you get OSC and you get ISO and you get all the other things that are there. But if you just need 1080p, it appears that all you need now is a business license, so slightly more than your personal license, and you need to file a support ticket. They're not going to give it to you for nothing. Like, I mean, like they're not going to just automatically give you 1080p, but all you have to do is file it. And once that rolls out, it should be, it doesn't sound like it's everywhere yet, but we actually have, but it's been rolling out. And again, it just started recently. So interesting little fact there.
Very good. A couple of people on the panel have given an hour freely of their time and need to be able to leave. Very quickly, Blue, have you got a content recommendation for us? Have you got like a movie or a TV show?
Barry and I have been mostly obsessed with anything written by Taylor Sheridan recently. I absolutely loved Landman. Thought it was awesome. One of the better shows I think I've seen in a while. So yeah, that's
yours.
me right now. Yep.
Very good. Alex, what have you got this week?
Have I mentioned that X-Files is now in HD? Did I talk about that one yet?
Yeah, you did.
Yes.
You've done it in passing though.
But I did do it. I'll make it a full-on pick. It's so great. It is. It doesn't lose that much. Like what I'm surprised at is, I mean, there's some cheesy stuff in there. It was the 90s, but so much of it, the story writing's good, the filmmaking's good. So I've mentioned it a couple times, but it's a really good show. And my family's watching it slowly. So I mentioned it in passing, but I'll make it the pick because if you're not watching it, if you didn't know that it was out there, I think it's on Hulu or something. I don't know where. I can't keep track of what is where, but it is it's the whole next year is because we watch one a day and there's 9 or 11 seasons. So there's 220 of these. So 12. I got 12 seasons. So there's 260 or whatever. I got a whole year of and it's so much. Shows are so much more enjoyable when you watch one a night than one a week. Like I find I won't even watch any seasons now until they're fully in. Like I'm not gonna in fact I kind of want to go wait until the year after they, like when you see it's 2025 now, I want to see that they ended in 2023. I want to know that the whole thing, like, okay, the whole picture's there. I've read a couple non-spoiler reviews and they said it ended well. Okay, now I'm ready to commit, rather than, like I don't want to get into another Game of Thrones thing where you just get thrown off a cliff.
Are you watching it via streaming or are you doing it via Blu-ray?
Streaming. Yeah. And it's great.
A tip I had from a guy years ago when we were watching 24 was when you were just doing one a night on DVD. He was always like, just watch the first 5 minutes of the next episode, and that's where you stop.
But that's
right.
What happens is you end up watching the rest of it. We used to say
it's a cliffhanger, and then it finishes at the 5-minute mark. That's when you stop, and that's where you pick up the next day.
My wife and I watched,
or you watch 7 episodes.
We'd watch a whole disc. You get it from Netflix, and it was like there was 4 on the disc, and we'd watch all 4. Like that was how it worked.
Yeah. Who else have we got? Muddy, what have you got?
All right. So this was actually a Netflix recommendation that popped up for us, and we're like, oh, looks interesting. It's called 0 Day. It's a mini series about Robert De Niro is an ex-president, cybersecurity, and it's like 6 45-minute episodes. So, a good long day. You can power through
One,
it. So
one night.
Exactly. So my wife's like, oh, it's like a movie. I was like, yeah, like a 4.5 hour movie. But no, it was great for a snow day, and I thought it was well done and enjoyable and just plausible enough that afterwards she's like, maybe we ought to take our money out of the bank. So I was like, okay, but
It's gonna be all right. We need to buy some gold.
It was a good one.
Yeah,
so,
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I like that.
Steve, what have you got? Hey, there it is.
Yeah, I'm listening to an audiobook at the moment, Influence, Psychology of Persuasion. It's a really long audiobook. It's about 20 odd hours. The production is awful, so don't listen to it for production values, but the content is really good. You can tell he's been starting recording in different environments, and it's really doing my head in. But when you've got other machines powering over the top of you when you're listening to it, it's okay. But yeah, I'm only just getting into it, but I think I'm going to have to go through it or endure it again to be able to suck some more content out of it, because it really is. It's got a lot of insights and a lot of studies behind it, and I'm really enjoying it.
Good one. And Carl, what have you got?
So this one is going to be an entire streaming service itself, but probably 90% of the stuff on this streaming service can be found for free on YouTube, which is great. So it's History Hit. So History Hit is essentially a streaming service, about $115, $120 a year. But the thing about History Hit is you have so many things in that you can go through as far as history, like all the different genres. And as I said, about 90% of everything you see here is available on their own YouTube channels. They have about 12 different YouTube channels divided up into like ancient history, military history. So pretty much everything you will see here, you'll find there. And they usually have ads at the beginning and the end of their YouTube videos for this service. But if you want to have full high HD quality, then History Hit. It's about the same price as Netflix per year, or Curiosity Stream. It's another good example. But yeah, it's very high quality streaming service. You can put this stuff on the background and like pretty much everything you can imagine, any kind of genre of history you can imagine. As I said, like there's military history, there's podcasts as well. There's free podcasts that go along with a lot of these. So you'll have a lot of the experts that are in these documentaries come on and do actual podcasts. But yeah, so this is my suggestion. If you're looking for a lot of content, and this is thousands of hours of content. So if people keep track of how many hours, I keep on suggesting this is going to be the biggest.
Yeah.
But yeah, History Hit.
It's not a competition, Carl. It's not as to who can suggest the longest content.
Well, I would suggest in the days of our lives. Days of our lives.
Very good one. Well, so well done, Carl. And I'm sure that History Hit has really helped you in your bar trivia nights, in keeping all that content in your brain. Very good. I want to thank the panel. Thanks especially to the East Coasters that have stayed up late. Thank you. And to the crew, to Robert, Peter, Alan, and Taylor that are making things work in the background. Keep pushing Vector and trying to make it all work. Each of the panel and everyone that was asking questions and people in the chat. It was great to see you. See us again next week. See you later.